How you doing tonight? It's IB Nation Sports Talk. We're up, we're running right off the bat. We're on time. Salty barely even had time to put me on the clock. We got started so fast tonight. Glad to have you with us. We've got a special guest that's going to join us first. Danielle Green, former Notre Dame women's basketball player, Purple Heart recipient. She joined the Army after leaving Notre Dame. It's been almost 20 years ago now, I guess, but I'm gonna be talking with her here in just a few minutes. We did have to record this earlier in the week. She's doing something called the Soldier Ride New York that is put on by Wounded Warrior Project, and she's going to tell you all about that. But she had to get going, so we had to record it before today. So that's going to be coming up first, talking with Danielle Green. And then after that, Jesse is going to join me. And of course, we will have some rapid fire, and we will have plenty of Notre Dame football conversation and more in rapid fire tonight. So that's what's coming up first. You're going to hear my conversation with Danielle Green, former Notre Dame women's basketball player who was wounded in Iraq during her time in service in the U.S. Army. And we will do that right now. And then we'll be back and talk to you in just a little bit with some Notre Dame football talk when Jesse joins me for rapid fire. We are honored today to be joined by Notre Dame women's basketball alum, U.S. Army veteran, Purple Heart recipient Danielle Green, who's going to be taking part in the Wounded Warrior Project's Soldier Ride New York this week. How are you today, Danielle?
I am doing well, Sean. I can't complain. I'm down here in St. Petersburg, Florida, 10 minutes from the water. Life is good.
I'll take that. Like we were just kind of talking before we started. I would definitely take that come January and February.
Amen to that.
What South Bend is like. And
Absolutely.
I mean, you're from Chicago as well. And I mean, there's so much to your story. I want to kind of go back and, you've got your Notre Dame stuff up there in the background just to kind of remind, some of, all of our Notre Dame listeners about, where you came from before we get to where you are right now. But, you grew up in Chicago. You played basketball for Muffet McGraw at Notre Dame in the mid to late 90s. Was Notre Dame, like, growing up, was that on your radar? Was it a goal? What part did that play when you were growing up in Chicago?
Notre Dame was always number one. I remember I started watching the Notre Dame football team when I was 7 years old. And I just remember seeing Touchdown Jesus. It's like, what is that? And the Basilica and the Golden Dome and these golden helmets. And as a 7-year-old, I'm like, this place must be special. I want to go there. But then during halftime, you would see the Army commercials and the Marine commercials, the proud, the few, the Marines, and be all you can be. And that always struck a chord with me as well. So my affinity towards the military and service in Notre Dame has been in me since I was 7.
Interesting. So you kind of had that was always something that was kind of in the back of your mind then, it sounds like, just the military, because you went sort of a different route. From what I understand, you did some ROTC, but you decided to enlist after graduating from Notre Dame. Is that right?
Right. Well, I did ROTC in high school. And so when I went to college, I asked to join ROTC, but they said, you're here on the basketball scholarship and it would probably be too much. So I kind of had to give it up. But towards the end of my Notre Dame career, retired Colonel David Woods bought some recruiters from the Air Force. And I started looking at becoming an Air Force officer right out of Notre Dame, but I just wasn't ready to quite pull the trigger. I wanted to see what was out there for me. So it's never left.
Well, and before your service, you obviously played for Muffet McGraw at Notre Dame. What was that experience like for you, playing for her and just being a part of the Notre Dame women's basketball program back then?
Well, I always have to say I'm grateful and I'm filled with gratitude that she believed in a kid from the inner city of Chicago. She was willing to, basically bet on me. She bet on me that, she not only would be a great asset to the team, but we trust that she can do what she's supposed to do in the classroom. So I owe a lot to her. I tell people she's my first drill sergeant. So the military, and that's a compliment, because the military was easy. When I went to basic training and AIT and went to Iraq, it was kind of easy for me because I had those early teachings from her, the 5 a.m. practices, the running back and forth, just building that character. And I don't think I really appreciated her and the coaching staff back then, but I'm 46 years old now. I get it now. And a lot of that stuff I'm trying to instill in my 8-year-old son, Daniel.
That's funny because I'm an Army veteran myself.
Oh, thank you for your service, Deshaun.
You too. I should have started with that. Yeah, that's right. But, I was not an elite, college athlete like you, but I played football, I wrestled, played baseball, that kind of stuff in high school. And I've told people that, especially, the physically demanding stuff like the wrestling and the football, like doing that really just what you're talking about, especially in basic training, just both from a physical and mental standpoint, just felt so much more prepared than I think a lot of other people just by taking part in sports in high school. And it sounds like you obviously had the same experience.
Absolutely. I don't know if I would have been as successful in my short military career without those, that mental toughness. You have to have a certain level of mental toughness to play at the Division I level or at any level. And so I really commend my Notre Dame training for somewhat preparing me unknowingly for the next stages of my life.
Well, it's funny you called Muffet McGraw your first drill sergeant because she's notorious for what became known as Coach McGraw time. Like everyone was on a different schedule when you were around Coach McGraw. And I imagine, again, from a promptness standpoint, that had to help you as well when you were in the military.
You know what it did, but I tell a lot of people, I was disciplined from the very beginning. A lot of people don't know. I grew up on the south side of Chicago in the Inglewood community, very, very tough community. And I knew if I wanted to go to the University of Notre Dame, I couldn't go to a neighborhood school. So I went to Roosevelt High School, which is on the north side of Chicago. So it was a 50-mile round trip for 4 years. And I had to be at school at 6:30 to make the 6:45 formation for ROTC. So a lot of that stuff was already instilled in me because I was trying to get to something higher. I was trying to be the first one on my mother's side to get to college, graduate. So a lot of stuff I just picked up on my own. And then over the course of your life career, different experiences just enhance that stuff in you.
I should mention, of course, you were a teammate of Niele Ivey, who's obviously the head coach right now. Did you see, she was a bit of a joker, I know, in her playing days. I got her right at the end of her playing career. She was a bit of a joker, back in the day. Did you see Coach Ivey in Niele's future, I guess, back then?
Absolutely. I did. I had an opportunity to play with Niele for 4 years, and she's just an amazing person on and off the court. And I always used to tell her mother, I said, when Coach McGraw decides to retire, I can see Niele becoming the head coach. And her mom would just she wouldn't say anything. And when that day came in 2020 and I was asked to do a video, I said, man, the prophecy came true. I mean, because you could just see you could see with the recruiting visits, when recruits came, Niele would take them under her wing and just, nurture them, take them around campus. You could see she always had that recruiting, that coaching, that mentoring, that leader in her. So I'm just very, very proud of Niele.
So as you said, you enlisted in the Army after you graduated at Notre Dame, and you became a member of the military police. You were a military police officer, and you were stationed in Baghdad for a time. And that's kind of where you are right now, the Wounded Warrior part of it. For maybe those who don't know your story, kind of pick it up from there after you ended up being stationed in Baghdad.
So I was, let me see. So we arrived to Iraq in January of 2004. I went over there as the company commander's top gunner. I was the top marksman in my unit, which is big deal because the MP Corps is mostly male dominated. So to be a a little bit older, mature, and be the top gunner was pretty awesome. But anyway, I was over there for 4 months, and one of our main duties was to train the Iraqi police officers how to serve, protect, defend their community, how to work with detainees. And so May 25th, 2004, we always had like 3 patrols. We had ground patrol, we had people inside the police station, and we had rooftop patrolling. And so that particular day, it was my turn to go up and patrol the rooftop. And maybe 5-10 minutes later, 2 rocket propelled grenades whizzed by me, and they hit 2 stories below. I'm on a 2-story building. I grabbed my weapon, and as I'm grabbing my weapon to kneel down, something hit me. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I found out it was a RPG, and it had separated my left arm from my body. I didn't know all this at the time. And all I remember was that I'm going to die in Iraq at 27 years old. And I became very, very emotional, very sad. But as I lay there, I realized that I might survive. So I remember saying a prayer, and I said, God, I'm only 27 years old. I have so much living to do. Just give me the strength to be able to tell my story. First, tell my story. And I wanted a child. And I think about the child, I'm like, where'd that come from? And I swear to you, Sean, a surge of energy hit my body where I thought I could get up and run. But I was too weak to get up and run. And then my comrades came to the rooftop, performed first aid, and I went over to the green zone. The green zone is where the hospital is.
Okay. What was that recovery process like?
Well, first it was initial shock. So when I woke up in the green zone, I noticed the chain of command was standing at the foot of the bed and they was crying. And I couldn't understand why they were crying because I was alive. But then finally I decided to look down, and I saw that my left arm was shorter than the right arm. And that's when I started to cry. The battalion commander came over and pinned me with the Purple Heart. And that's how that day ended. And so I remember going to Germany, and in Germany, my traumatic surgeon was a Notre Dame graduate.
Oh, wow.
Dr. Woods, he's retired Colonel Woods' son, and Mr. and Mrs. Woods, they were members of our fast break club. And so It was weird. I get to Germany, and they're there visiting their son. And so they get on the phone and they call Coach McGraw. And I say, Coach McGraw, all those years you wanted me to use my right hand. I have no other choice.
No choice now.
No other choice. And so for me, my recovery became about, was I going to be bitter or was I going to be better? And Wounded Warrior Project helped me to become better because they was the first veteran service organization to meet me at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. And, people talk about just a backpack, but that backpack meant a lot because when you come from the war zone, all you have is the clothes on your back. And so in that backpack, they had essentials, toiletries. And although it was male stuff, I still was grateful. And I knew that, they probably would be my new family. And they were. They helped me to escape my mind. They helped me to escape the hospital. And in some instances, they helped me to escape my body by connecting me within the community and going on trips, going to football games, going out to dinner. And so my therapeutic process at the hospital wasn't as bad. It still was challenging because, like I said, I was left-handed. So occupational therapy had its own challenges. Now it's like, how do you use, one hand, in particular, your non-dominant hand, to do almost everything: driving, cooking, bathing. So I had to learn how to ask for help, and I had to learn how to accept it, move on, and create new opportunities. And those new opportunities came in the form of working with Wounded Warrior Project and staying connected with them.
So you've really been a part of Wounded Warrior Project ever since then, to some extent, right?
To some extent, yes. I mean, I'm a Warrior Speak spokesperson now.
Right.
But back then I was just participating in events, just gaining my confidence. Now I have a piece of equipment that's attached to me now, either my cosmetic arm or my activity arm, to assist me with my adaptive sports. I've never stopped working out. I work out almost every day, and I'm always trying to learn and grow. One of my favorite sports, believe it or not, is golf.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have attachments for almost anything and everything you can think of. And so that helps me out mentally to just stay physically active.
Have you ever golfed with Coach McGraw?
I do remember golfing with her when I was 8. I probably was 19, and
Okay.
she didn't have a lot of patience back then. She's
Yeah.
pretty good. And I remember golfing with her, Coach Sutherland, and Katrina Gaither. And I think we only played 9 holes. But yeah, she just wasn't very patient.
No.
But I would love to connect with her and play with her now. I don't keep score though. I don't
Okay.
keep score. I can hit the ball.
So I think, as you said, you were left-handed, but that is the hand that you lost. All these years later, do you feel right-handed yet, or is it still, are there still some challenges that come along with that?
It's 19 years later, Sean. It's like if you haven't figured it out after 19 years, then you're not gonna figure it out. So it's second nature now. It's second nature. There's some things. I miss my arm when I want to weight lift, like when I want to really throw up some weights. I have to go a little lighter now, but no, it's second nature now. And if I need help, it's okay to ask for help. So I've given myself permission to ask for help, even from strangers. If I'm at the health club or out in public, it's okay.
So a few years back, you received the Pat Tillman Award at the ESPYs. What was that whole experience like? What was it like to be honored like that?
It was a really neat experience. So the background behind that story is after I completed my first soldier ride in 2005, that event was a springboard to many other things. I decided to go to graduate school and get my master's degree in community counseling, clinical counseling. And that's what I did for the Department of Veterans Affairs for several years. And so I left Chicago, moved to South Bend, Indiana, and I was a therapist. And I was working with our OEF veterans, our Vietnam veterans, doing outreach in the community. And somehow the committee, the Pat Tillman committee, found out about the work I was doing in the community, invited me to New York, interviewed me, and then said, hey, we would like to honor you to be the 2015 Pat Tillman Award winner for service. And it meant the world to me because I did follow Pat Tillman, at Arizona State. The fact that he gave up his NFL career to serve, I just felt extremely honored. I mean, anytime you can be a part of somebody's legacy, and I feel like winning that award, it was like for all the hard work that I had endured, that I had survived, now was thriving. And now instead of going into hiding, I was giving back to my community, giving back to my fellow veterans. And so just to know that I'm part of his legacy, it leaves me somewhat speechless.
You got to kind of hobnob with a lot of celebrities when you were out there too, didn't you?
I did. So we're talking 8 years ago. So, my memory's kind of fading, but I do remember meeting Stephen A. Smith and I think Russell Wilson. I missed LeBron James by a few minutes.
Okay.
I met Holly Berry. She introduced me. Let me see. Met a ton of people. Like I said, it's been several years now. So
I bet that's got to be a pretty cool thrill to be able to kind of stand up on that stage and do something.
It was a very cool experience. People asked me last year. I introduced President Biden during Soldier Ride in DC, and people's like, "Well, how was that?" And I said, "You know what? At 46 years old, I'm not really awestruck anymore. I'm grateful for the experiences and the people's paths that I get to cross. But when it comes down to it, celebrities are just people, just like you and I."
Right.
And so it was quite the honor. But being around those veterans that need to be inspired and motivated to keep moving forward, that's what I'm about.
And so kind of part of that now, you're working for Wounded Warrior Project, and you're going to be at Soldier Ride New York this week. You're actually getting ready to head out there in the morning. So, you're taking part in that. It's a multi-day event. Kind of what details can you kind of tell us about that? Exactly, what Soldier Ride New York is.
So Soldier Ride New York, people don't know, this year marks Wounded Warrior Project's 20-year anniversary of honoring and empowering veterans. And Soldier Ride actually started in New York. So it's a huge celebration, and they're bringing out 40 warriors to come out and test themselves mentally and physically. And we're riding through the Hamptons, through Manhattan. I think I want to say Coney Island. It's about 20 plus miles every day. And just to raise awareness, just to show our appreciation, to give veterans the confidence and self-esteem to say that they can do it. Because all these veterans, I've rode in a couple of soldier rides before, but many of these veterans have not. And so this is to give them hope. This is their chance to learn more about what Wounded Warrior Project is. This is about them being honored. You know, I tell people when I participated in my first soldier ride, it was like a parade, because when I came back home to Chicago, there was no parades for me. So that first soldier ride and seeing the patriotism and the kids' signs and the flags waving, that's what we're going to experience in New York. And just to show our gratitude that although the wars are over, that we're not forgotten, that the need remains stronger now as our population of veterans start to age.
Absolutely. Is there a way, if people want to, either donate to Wounded Warrior Project, help Wounded Warrior, are there ways that people can get involved like that?
Absolutely, Sean. They can go to woundedwarriorproject.org. Okay. Woundedwarriorproject.org. And there they can donate, get involved. They can start community programs or fundraisers. I mean, I'm just amazed over the 20 years how we expanded from a backpack program, grassroots program, to, providing mental health counseling, providing adaptive sports, benefits counseling, going to schools, educating the kids about the history of the military and service. And it just continues to grow and evolve. But as I tell people, we can't do what we do without the help of corporate partners, donors, the community, because we don't receive grants from the federal government. We don't receive funding. So it's all donated from those entities that I just mentioned.
All right. Excellent. So woundedwarriorproject.org, and we'll definitely put that up, a link up for that as well.
Absolutely.
And I think you mentioned your son, Daniel. How old is he now? Is he a big Notre Dame fan?
Daniel is all over the place. So Daniel will be Daniel would be 9 years old next month. He's a Leo. Daniel's a handful, but I tell people he's my why and he's my purpose. And so Daniel's really not into sports. I think he's opposite of me. He's more of a musician. So he plays the piano, the trumpet. He's learning the violin, and he can sing. Wow. He's very
impressive too.
Yeah, he does have a gift for that. And he's trying to play soccer, but he's a perfectionist. So he was learning tennis. He was taking up some tennis, because I feel like if he's going to blame people, he needs to play individual sports. But he's a smart kid, and like I told you, he's my why.
Excellent. Danielle Green taking part in the Wounded Warrior Project Soldier Ride New York this weekend. And again, woundedwarriorproject.org is the place if you want to get involved, donate, whatever it happens to be. Danielle, thanks again for your service, and appreciate your time. It was a lot of great stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean, for having me on your show.
Absolutely.
And thank you for your service and all the veterans out there.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of veterans who listen and watch our show,
even in our Notre Dame family.
Absolutely. That's right. Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you, Sean.
So again, that's Danielle Green, former Notre Dame women's basketball player, and served in Iraq. She's working for Wounded Warrior Project now. That's kind of what she was alluding to or talking about there in that interview. And she was wounded in Iraq nearly 20 years ago, and has gone on to continue to do a lot of great things. And obviously has a very good attitude. And like I said, a lot of veterans that we had. Michael Johnson chiming in, Michael said he was in Iraq. That would have been during Desert Storm back in the 1991 days. That was kind of the tail end of my service. I was in Germany at that time, and our unit didn't, get shipped down to Iraq. But a lot of guys that I went through training and stuff like that who were in different units ended up down there. And then he said he was in Afghanistan from '04 to '06 as well. So you stayed in for a long time. And of course, thank you. And all of our other veterans who watch and listen to our shows. Of course, we appreciate you as well. How are you doing today, Jesse?
I'm doing well. It's Friday Eve, so I can't really complain. Tomorrow
There
I get
is no
paid as
Thursday
well,
anymore.
so
There's only Friday Eve. There's
it is
Friday Eve and there's
only
Friday.
Friday Eve, and most importantly, tomorrow's payday, so it's payday Eve as well.
That's exactly right. Well, are you ready for rapid fire?
I think so. I think the only way to wrap up this show is to do some rapid fire.
I hear you. I hear you. Thank you very much, Decaf 18. And let's do it. So we're going to start with Sam Hartman, who was actually on Sports Center earlier today. Would you be more surprised if Sam Hartman throws 40 touchdown passes or if he throws 15 interceptions this season?
So this was a tough one for me because
it was meant to be tough. I'm glad that I made it tough.
So I looked at just regular season, 12 games for both of these. 15 interceptions means you're throwing like 1.25 per game, and if you're throwing 40 touchdowns, it's like 3.33 touchdowns per game. I think I would actually be more surprised if he threw the 15 interceptions, because I don't think he's going to throw as many this year. Maybe compared to the last two seasons where he's seen a little bit of a spike in interception. I just think that's naturally going to be because his pass attempts are going to be down, and I think they're going to be more kind of methodical. I think it a lot of times he was just kind of asked to make something happen. But at Notre Dame, I think there's going to be like intent with just about every sort of pass, right? Like, and then I'm not saying that's going to be the case for every game because, there's going to be instances where he's going to have to create, but again, I just think that the passing is going to be more methodical this season. And I think 40 touchdowns is a lot. And that means that, again, that he's pushing 3 to 4 touchdowns per game. I think the running game is going to contribute to some of these touchdowns throughout the season as well. So I think I'm going to end up saying the interceptions. I don't think he gets to 40. I'd be surprised if he got to both of those, actually, but I'd be more surprised if he got to 15 interceptions.
Yeah, I mean, he was knocking on the door of 40 for the last 2 years, 38 and 39. Again, different system he's going to be playing in, but also, again, as we keep reminding people, he's going to have a much better offensive line. I don't think he's going to be sacked 35 times like he was 2 years ago or 34 times like last year at Wake Forest, between the running game and a much better offensive line that he's going to have. And I think the biggest question we have in terms of what exactly is this passing game going to look like? There is the give and take, sort of the yin and the yang. There is a running game. How is that running game going to potentially take away from maybe the chance to get to 40 touchdowns, for example? Because, again, Wake didn't have much of a running game. I looked at Caleb Williams last year. He threw 42 touchdown passes at USC. USC also had 30 rushing touchdowns last season, which is actually 5 more than Notre Dame had. So I don't think just because you have a strong running game along with a good quarterback and potentially, a really good passing game, I don't think that necessarily, that one negates the other. I think that you get some vertical shots downfield and maybe you end up inside the 10-yard line. You end up with a rushing touchdown, or you're running in the middle of the field and you get a play action and you hit a shot downfield. Now you're in the end zone. I don't think the running game is necessarily going to take away from Sam Hartman's ability to still put up some really big numbers from a passing standpoint. I just think that it's all going to complement each other. So, like you, I think that the passing touchdown, will he get to 40? I'm not positive he'll get to 40. I think he's got a really good chance to get to at least 35. That's, like if I were making an over-under, we did the Vegas over-under last week, which is only 26.5, which is insane that it's that low. Like I would put it at least at 29.5 and maybe even up a little higher at like 33, 34.5, something like that, So I think he's got a really good chance to get the touchdown passes. I'd be surprised if he throws that many interceptions because I think that that's where he'll be impacted, more. Like he doesn't have to maybe take as many chances throwing the football. He'll be able to rely on that run game. And his decaf 18 is saying play action will be big. And, DJ saying also hoping we see a lot more RPO. And that's something that they're getting accustomed to as well, is the old RPOs, bringing the RPOs back. So I think that's going to be good as well. So there are 44 days to go until Notre Dame kicks off the season against Navy in Dublin. And 44, of course, corresponds with junior Tuihalamaka's jersey number. Tuihalamaka moving to Viper this season. And the Viper defensive end, where he'll likely be, you would expect anyway, behind Jordan Botelho there. My question to you, over under 6.5 combined sacks and tackles for loss for junior Tuihalamaka this season?
I'm a little biased here because I think that he's going to have a pretty
You're very high
season.
on junior Tuihalamaka.
Yeah, and I've been on the record before saying that. I think that he actually shatters that. I would more so set it at like 11.5, meaning he gets 1 sack or tackle for loss per game, essentially.
Hold on, before you
definitely
continue,
hitting the over.
Before you continue, here's the reason I set it at 6.5, because Justin Adamalola, that was his combined number last year, 6.5, and he was essentially where Tuihalamaka is right now, the number 2 Viper behind Isaiah Foskey. He had 3.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. So that's why I set it at 6.5. So you think the number needs to be set a lot higher at 11.5? Is that what you said?
That's maybe too drastic. I'd say like 9.5. 9.5 is where I would set it.
Double digits is the number. I'm fairly confident in that as well, unless Jordan Botelho just turns into a beast and he's too hard to get off the field, then which he very well could. He's got we know, like Vince and I did the rankings of the top 10 guys on the roster this season. Botelho just missed for both of us. Like, from a pure ability standpoint, athletic ability, the whole thing. And this is kind of what I tried to explain when we were explaining that. It's like, it's not good enough just to be a good athlete and thought of as a good player. You also have to be someone who everyone is fairly confident has put it all together and you're ready to go right now. And that's why I had to leave Botelho off. So there should at least be some opportunities for junior Tuihalamaka. I like that 9.5 that you're talking about. I think I would still go over, just like you as well. But you're even higher on him than I am.
Yeah, I just feel like overall what makes him so special is he has linebacker speed, and he's going to be able to come down and play a position where his speed helps, and that's what kind of separates you and creates you, essentially makes you an elite, especially when it comes to pass rushing. But like, you don't need elite speed, right? Like the Bosa brothers don't have elite speed. Like they run between like 4.8s and 5.0s. And he's faster than that, and he's very strong and physical. And I know that because they've worked him in as, like the 3 technique and some of their defensive packages as well, an interior defensive lineman. So really that just shows to me that you have the strength. Like you don't get those opportunities if you can't hold your own in those situations. And I really like his overall athleticism in a position that requires less athleticism than what he had to do in the past. So I think it's kind of like he's unlocked kind of more potential, I think, at a position because he has an excess of athleticism and speed.
I agree. I think that this could be a really good fit for him, especially with these other linebackers that are coming in behind him. Derek says leaving Botelho off my list puts me on his list. Good point. Touche. By the way, hit the like button if you would, kind of boost us up there a little bit right now. We would appreciate it. We always appreciate you smacking that like
These are the dog days. We're getting close to the season.
I know. That's right. In fact, we got word today. We can officially say when fall training camp begins. We're not supposed to give out the full schedule, but we are allowed to say when training camp begins. So day 1 of training camp is going to be Wednesday, July 26th. and there will be a practice availability for the media that day. Wednesday, July 26th, first
About
day
2 weeks.
of training camp. That's right. 2 weeks from yesterday will be the first day of camp. So we've known that for a while. We just got the official word that we could actually say when it starts. They just don't want us giving the full schedule out of, all of our availabilities and when practices are and all that kind of stuff. So we'll be there 2 weeks from yesterday when training camp begins. Looking forward to it. It's on the way. All right. This is an interesting one. And I saw this. I think somebody posted it on the boards. Football Scoop had this story up. Former Michigan tight end Jake Butt tweeted a story about how Jim Harbaugh reworked their practices in his first spring as head coach there. Players, of course, are allowed a maximum of 4 hours per day with the team. So rather than split it up like, here's some meeting time, here's some practice time, and splitting it up like that, they just took all 4 hours and put the guys out on the field. That's where they did it. Not only did they do that, Harbaugh split the team into an A team and a B team. They would have the B team practice by themselves for 2 hours from 1 to 3 p.m. Then the A team would show up and they would practice with the B team from 3 to 5 for their first 2 hours. So then by the end of that 2 hours, the B team was done. They'd completed their 4 hours. The A team stayed for 2 more hours by themselves. In total, the coaches were out there for 6 hours, but each group of players, the A team and the B team, got 4 total hours, some by themselves where they got a ton of reps, some, where they're mixing it in and doing other stuff. So my question to you, Jesse, is, like we've talked about player development, especially with these young quarterbacks for Notre Dame, like Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchie. We were just talking about this yesterday. Potential early enrollee in CJ Carr next spring, not to mention, you're going to have a couple key losses, 3 key losses on the offensive line, both tackles and the center most likely, linebackers, running back. So there's going to be some youth out there. Would reformatting practice like this, what kind of benefit do you think it could have, especially from those quarterbacks, where like getting reps, get the most reps possible? What do you think? You've played before. What do you think about this format?
Yeah, so like the main thing I would consider here is that it's in the spring. And the spring is a considerably more of a learning period,
Right.
than fall camp. When you get to fall camp, it's time to buckle down and figure out what's going to happen for the season. But in the spring, when there's a lot of learning going on, a lot of younger guys like you kind of touched on, potentially Notre Dame's situation next year, I do find this actually to be really interesting and something that could be beneficial. And I've never heard of it being this way before. And a lot of it too is, like you said, you only get 4 hours, and that includes meetings, film time, etc. So it sounds like they're just cutting out all meetings and film time, and their only concern is about what you're doing on the field. And in the spring, again, that's beneficial because for these younger guys, I would much rather have 2 extra hours on the field than sitting in a meeting room and kind of boringly
Because you're not
watching
game
film.
planning. You're not game planning in the spring. The film's not quite as important, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, it's basically all the film is the only time the film is beneficial is basically when you're doing the combined stuff, when you have, offense versus defense, but a lot of it's just individual periods and, working through position group drills and etc. So I do think it'd be very beneficial because you're getting these guys would be younger and getting more, hands-on time with the coaches. And me as a learner, it's always been, I'd rather do it and kind of learn by mistake
Absolutely.
than learn and watch on film and then, kind of get roasted in the film room and then have to go back out there the next day. It's just, I think it leads to more confidence ultimately because these guys will have the opportunity to really learn through their mistakes out on the field. And it's kind of crazy that the coaches are out there for 6 hours and something like this. And I think it was beneficial. Another reason I think it was beneficial is because it was Harbaugh's first year. So it sounded like he really kind of wanted to repave,
Right.
the foundation and the fundamentals. So that's another kind of thing that that played into it. I'd be curious to see if it still goes on now. I would probably say no.
I don't
because
think
of
it
what
does.
we just talked about. Like, he's probably
I
got
think,
the foundation set on a
yeah,
lot of this stuff.
and that's what, I kind of abbreviated what I read there from, for that Jake Butts put up there on that tweet. It was a long thread kind of thing, but that was the point. Is that's how he essentially sort of rebuilt the culture and like all that kind of stuff when he came in the door by doing this. And he basically said, look, you get better by actual
Right.
playing out there on the field, just what you were talking about, not by sitting and watching film. And again, when you're doing it in the spring, there's still going to be some benefit. And I'm not saying, because just like what you're saying, this was the first season Harbaugh did this. I'm just saying, for this specific instance, especially with the young quarterback situation and trying to find out what you've got in your quarterbacks, I think it could be very beneficial, because if those three go through this season, or two go through this season, Angeli and Minchie, and then Carr joins them in the spring potentially, you still have three completely unproven, lacking experience quarterbacks, even less experience than what you had starting off last fall with Buckner and Pine. So I'm not suggesting that they should make every practice like this, where the coaches are out there on the field for 6 hours and the players are out there on the field for the 4 hours that they're talking about. But like at least once a week, I think that there would be a lot of benefit in it. Like you do that, and then maybe you with some film, watching some of the things that you did, constructive criticism from those practices and that kind of stuff. But again, especially from the quarterback situation, most important position on the field, the more reps you can get, the better. So I think there'd be a lot of benefit for Notre Dame in that with those quarterbacks that they're going to have next spring.
Yeah, and you touched on it, just kind of hit the hammer on the head there. It's the quarterback development is the area that would need / see
Right.
the most benefit from this. And
accelerate the quarterback development.
Yeah, exactly. We talked yesterday about, what that would look like. And we've talked about in the past, like what would make us feel comfortable. And it's just, they got to start the system somehow. And I think that would be a great Kickstarter of trying to figure out and go through a lot of quarterback development, because then in the spring, you can really assess, where you are at comfortably, right? Like before the start of the season. And I think there would be an opportunity for another transfer portal window in there too, after, if things are looking just completely horrible, which I don't think that they would, but right. It gives you again a better chance to give, a breakdown or analysis of all these quarterbacks and what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, you could put them in a lot of different situations. Like some of the best coaches that I had in high school, this has been a while, but like the best coaches I had, like we practiced, live situations, at different points in practice, whether it was the beginning or the end. And, you always hear like you don't rise, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training, basically, like you hear that kind of stuff. And I think that that's completely true. They could put these quarterbacks in different, at least pseudo live situations as well, and just a lot of instructional periods out there by doing something like this. And again, like if you've got, two guys in the A group and then, one of the guys in the B group and then a walk-on or whoever else it happens to be, then you could rotate those quarterbacks around so that, and you wouldn't have them, you wouldn't like have them throwing their arm off and that kind of stuff, but still you could get them a heck of a lot of reps in a situation like that. So I think it's really, really intriguing to see the way that they did that. And I mean, like when you look at how Harbaugh at Stanford, San Francisco, and then Michigan was able to turn things around at all three of those stops, and then you look at something like this as an example of something that he's did. I mean, he's done. You don't have to like him, but
he's got good ideas.
He's a good coach. He's shown he's a good coach. He's obviously,
a little quirky,
a little outside the lines, a little quirky, but yeah, still a good coach, knows what he's doing. All right, so the MLB Players Association wants the pitch clock rules loosened so that they have more time between pitches and maybe the ability, like to step off the rubber a little bit more during the postseason. Do you buy or sell this idea?
Yeah, I buy this actually, and this was going to like when these rules were announced at the beginning of the season. I think that's great. For the regular season, it's a grind of 162 games. If you're going to have that many games, you can't have average time of 3.5, 4 hours, whatever it might be. So yeah, I'll all aboard on that. But when you get to the playoffs, it's obviously a much smaller pool of teams, and the stakes are much higher. I think you've earned the right, or kind of the reward, to have loosened pitch clock rules, because every pitch ultimately matters, right? Like, you're not just trying to get through the game or rush through the game. I think that my rules would be you get one more, disengagement per in the playoffs per at bat, and then you get 5 seconds added per at bat. So if no one's on, you get 20 seconds, and if you got runners on, then you get 25 seconds. I think that it's fair to say that the playoffs would reward 5 more seconds per pitch, and one more disengagement per batter, because again, the stakes are higher, and in the playoffs, guys stealing bases and in those runs, every run's going to matter essentially. So I buy this, and I hope that they do it, because of I like to see, since the stakes are higher, more conscious effort going into each pitch.
But shouldn't you be used to it by the time the playoffs roll around? Like the
Yeah,
college baseball has had this for a couple years, and like the College World Series, I don't remember seeing any pitch clock issues during the College World Series. Guys are just used to it by now.
Yeah, I see that, but again, I just think that the stakes are just a little bit ramped up, and so I don't mind. Playoff baseball is a lot easier to watch than a regular season game on a Tuesday. So I don't mind if the game goes 15 to 30 seconds, 30 minutes longer.
I do.
Pitchers are getting a little extra time.
Those are actually the games that matter more, and those are the games that more people are going to be watching. Like baseball during the regular season is watched regionally. It's not watched on a national level. Like John is saying, the pitch clock should be eliminated. Chi-Town doesn't like the pitch clock either. I've said before, from a TV standpoint, I like the pace of the game. If I'm at the game, it's a little bit different. I don't mind the length of the game as much. But these games, especially when you get into the LCSs and the World Series, and these games are starting after 8:00, those are the ones that you want to make sure go quicker, because you want people to actually watch from start to finish. So, Here's the problem with the Players Association. The Players Association basically let Major League Baseball, when they were negotiating this deal a year or two ago, they let Major League Baseball say, okay, you can change the rules you want, basically so they could get more money. They gave up the right to negotiate these rules so they could get more money. And now on the backside, they've got their money, and now they want to come back in and say, well, we don't really like these rules that much. You need to change them for the postseason. So I'm completely fine with them the way they are. I'm not pushing back against them the way, some other people are. So I say stick with them. Once you get through 182 games, you should have a better feel by then of what you need to do. So I don't think you need to go changing things once you get to the postseason.
Yeah, I like the rules, don't get me wrong. And if they didn't change them, I wouldn't be upset about it. But I understand kind of, I guess, the logic for why you would want it, just because of, again, the stakes are heightened. Like
the step off thing, again, like I wouldn't mind maybe one more step off. I wouldn't go changing the clock, because I get what you're saying. Those runs do matter, obviously, especially once you get to the postseason. Decaf says sell. They don't need to adjust their cups and readjust their batting gloves. I do that. Chi-Town says, why do we want games shorter? When I go to Wrigley or Kaminsky, I know the Chi Sox play at a newer stadium. I want the game to run over. And that's what I completely agree. That's what I was just saying. When I'm at a game, I don't care how long the game lasts. It's mostly when you're watching it on TV. Nobody wants a 3.5-hour game when you're watching it on TV, especially if it starts at 8:30 at night in the postseason. That's the biggest reason they've made these changes, because viewership has gone down so far. They want renewed, they want much more interest from younger demographics. There was too little action actually going on in the field. You know, their audience was already in the 50 plus age demographic and getting older by the year, basically by the minute it was getting older. They needed to find a way to try to draw in a younger crowd. And that's why they did this, to try to shorten things and to bring more action into the game again, so that there were actually things going on in the game. And so far it's been better this year.
I can't remember. I saw a stat. I can't remember what it was exactly. I was actually trying to find it right now, but I'm pretty sure I saw that the new rule changes have been such a hit so far that they've lowered like an age metric by like 5 years or something already, basically.
Really?
Like, yeah, the average.
I hadn't seen that.
I can't remember. I wish I could pull it up, but they've already they've already shown that like these new rules have really had a great effect so far, and it's lowered, something between like the viewership between a certain age demographic and that average has gone down by at least 5 years, I want to say.
Wow. That's pretty impressive in that short amount of time that they've already been able to do that. But, again, like I said,
that was the goal.
When I go to a game, I don't care how long it lasts. In fact, there are people who, we're talking about suing because it's like you're paying the same amount of money, but you're getting like an hour less at the ballpark, to actually do your thing. And they were talking about suing and trying to lower the ticket prices and all that kind of stuff. And, you go to a lot of games, so you can, probably speak to it. Even I haven't been to a big league game so far this year. Can you tell a big difference when you're at a game?
Yeah, I mean, you really can. And I think what was shown is that I wasn't at the game, but a week ago, the Guardians played their quickest game ever, and it was like an hour and 53 minutes. And it's even more prominent at Guardians games because they're low scoring, not a lot of hitting, and just a lot of small ball. And so you can definitely tell the pace of game is like quicker. They get through the games much faster. But I'm like you, at the game, I don't care because everything seems to go by quick when you're at the game. But when I'm at home, and that's where I'm watching majority of the games, right? Like majority of the games, you maybe go, unless you're a season ticket holder, the casual fan probably goes to like 2 to 3 games at maximum per year. So the rest of the games, I like, and I watch a lot of Cubs games on TV. Like I enjoy getting through those relatively quickly because of that reason. I can get it done with, and my girlfriend doesn't like watching a 3-hour game compared to a 2 to 2.5 hour game, right? Like everybody wins in that situation.
Yeah, Chi-Town says the old guys have all the money. That may be true, but here's the problem, Chi-Town. If your only demographic right now is an older demographic, in 20 years, you have nobody watching on TV and nobody at the ballpark. That's why you have to shoot for a younger demographic. That's, just like, I think we've talked about this before, like Jesse, you grew up going to Notre Dame women's basketball games, and 20 plus years ago, that national championship season, the 2001 season, right around that time, the marketing department there at Notre Dame, they were marketing both an older demographic as well as young families. And that combination has helped them keep really healthy crowds inside Purcell Pavilion to watch their games over these years. And what happens now, 20 plus years later, those young families are, middle-aged to older families, but the kids who grew up going to those games, like you, remain fans, and they are paying customers now as well. It's like that's why you've got to shoot for the younger demographic. Like baseball, like people on here, most of we always kind of get poked for it when we talk about baseball. Most people are like, "Oh, baseball is being played. When does baseball season start?" They start, and that's the point, because there was so much interest being lost in baseball. But it's kind of cool to see that some of this stuff has helped bring some of that back. So Jess, the NFL has told the New York Jets they're going to be HBO's Hard Knocks team this season. Meanwhile, Netflix just dropped a series called Quarterback, which followed Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota throughout last season. So which of those two are you most interested in?
So I would say I'm more interested in the Netflix series Quarterback, just because it's the new thing, right? Like we haven't seen that before. We don't know what it is. And then obviously it's got Patrick Mahomes on it. Like Marcus Mariota doesn't do a whole bunch for me. Kirk Cousins doesn't do a ton for me either.
Your
It's
boy
funny
Kirk
because
Cousins.
based on that list, it's kind of like tiered. You get the top tier Patrick Mahomes, you get the middle tier Kirk Cousins, and then you get kind of the lower tier Marcus Mariota. But I'm still interested in the Hard Knocks of the Jets season, and I'm very interested to see, you know, how much Aaron Rodgers content we get and what he's like on camera. And then honestly too, I'm excited to see, you know, some more of like Robert up close and personal and his kind of coaching philosophy, because I respect his defensive mind and, you know, the solid defenses that he always puts together. So that's interesting. But again, what puts it over the top for me for quarterback is it's just the new thing. We haven't seen it before. No one really knows what it is. I've seen Hard Knocks seasons. I know what Hard Knocks is about. But again, it's just like the new thing. And so that's what's ultimately got me more excited.
I agree with what Tanner said. Brittany Mahomes annoys me as well. I just can't believe how much the Jets tried to fight being on Hard Knocks.
Oh, I didn't know that. They didn't want to be on Hard Knocks?
Oh, you didn't know? Yeah, they resisted. Basically it came down to 4 teams. The way
I knew the 4 teams, but I didn't know the Jets didn't want to be
the
on
criteria for teams to be eligible for Hard Knocks. It eliminates teams with first-year head coaches, teams that qualified for the playoffs in the past 2 seasons, and teams that appeared on the show in the last 10 seasons. So it came down to 4 teams that were possible: the Jets, the Commanders, the Saints, and what was the 4th one? Jets, Commanders. And the Bears. The Bears were the 4th one. So those were the 4 possibilities. Nobody wanted to step up and volunteer to do it. You know, Aaron Rodgers signing with the Jets made it seem more and more like it was going to happen. Robert Saleh kept saying no. You know, all this stuff about, oh, it'll be too much of a distraction. It's like, are you kidding? You know, like all of these guys, they either have their own podcast or they're doing media or their social media. You know, there's
just extra cameras around. It's not like they're in anyone's way. They do all the shooting, editing, cutting of, you know, put them together themselves. Like the only thing that would be a little bit extra is if they do, you know, some of those kind of like close up or one-on-one little interview excerpts kind of stuff. That would be the only thing that's really extra, because I know they have to stay out of the way with all of their cameras and everything.
Yeah, they're mostly flies on the wall, I think, with the exception of like what you're talking about. You know, like they mic up a coach and then they put their cameras in the back of the room, and it's like, you know, they're not up there and in their face, I don't think, all the time. And, you know, so and again, as much of this kind of media as there is,
I mean, it's today, New York too. It's like,
exactly.
Your media is central.
Exactly. I cheated a little bit because I actually watched the first episode of Quarterback last night. And it is pretty good. And I think that obviously what differentiates these two is it's the same kind of thing where they're telling a story and they're behind the scenes and they're micing guys up. The difference is this is like, 8 months since the season ended. They put all this together and now they're releasing this series about a week or so before training camps start. Whereas obviously Hard Knocks comes out a week at a time while they're going through training camp. So it's a little bit different the way they're telling the story. And, you know, you actually hit the nail on the head with how you described it. You've got an elite quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. You've got kind of a middle tier quarterback in Kirk Cousins. And then you had a guy in Marcus Mariota who, you know, I guess he signed with the Atlanta Falcons and, you know, kind of trying to keep his career going and that kind of thing. After the fact, we know how that ended up because Desmond Ridder obviously ended up being, you know, the quarterback there. But in the first episode, you know, they're just kind of starting to tell that story. So it was interesting. It was, you know, it was good. There was nothing earth-shattering in it, but it was fun. It was kind of a souped-up version of Hard Knocks with, you know, but like instead of you're telling the story, you know, about, you know, what quirks the head coach has, or, you know, some guy at the end of the roster, you know, who was drafted in the 7th round, or an undrafted free agent trying to make the team. You're just following these quarterbacks throughout the season, and and they're kind of in with their families a little bit and stuff like that. So it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty interesting and definitely worth watching episode 2 anyway, and probably keep watching it after that. Hard Knocks, like you said, we've kind of been there, done that. It's almost run its course, I think, at this point. Speaking of which, though, Jerry Jones just sold the rights to a docuseries to Netflix for just under $50 million. It's going to be the Cowboys' rise to prominence in the early 90s. It's already drawn comparisons to The Last Dance. So, Jess, Mr. Fellow Cowboys fan, scale of 1 to 10, how much are you looking forward to seeing this?
Yeah, I mean, as being a passionate Cowboys fan, and probably I would say that the Cowboys are the team that I get the most into in terms of professional sports. I'd have to say my overall excitement is a 9 out of 10, and especially when talking about the early 90s, it was, an era that I've only heard about and partially seen about, but I haven't actually got to, submerge myself in that kind of content before. It's just kind of tales, right? I think the only reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is if Jerry Jones is releasing this and saying it's okay, it's got to portray him in a way that he is the savior, or it was all really his idea that led the charge. So again, Jerry Jones doesn't do anything for no reason, right? He's going to make money off of this, and it's going to paint him to be probably, the mastermind behind it all. So that would be the only thing that would knock my level of excitement down at the end of the day.
I'm very interested in it. I'm reading the book, and I'm a slow reader to begin with, but I also will start reading and then I'll put a book away, and I'll kind of go, oh yeah, I need to go back and read that. But I'm reading the book. Jeff Pearlman, who is the guy who wrote the book that the LA Lakers HBO series is based on. He wrote a book about the Cowboys of that era as well. So I'm kind of reading about that era right now. But I completely agree. That's my biggest concern. Is Jerry just going to take credit for everything? Is he going to give Jimmy Johnson any credit? Is he going to try to rewrite it like he pulled off the Herschel Walker trade and not Jimmy Johnson? That's what I'm really curious what it's going to look like. Just how much he's going to play with the truth, because he's got the money and he owns the team. So I'll be really curious to see that, but I am anxious to see it. And just like we were talking about yesterday, I would love to see something like this on that, like that Lou Holtz era Notre Dame, and even before that, leading up to it from the Faust era into the Lou Holtz era, a series like this. I think it would be perfect. And then, you said something on Rocket. You could do like a whole episode if you did like an 8 to 10, episode series on Notre Dame from that era. You could do a whole episode on Rocket Ismail, I think, if you wanted. So, but to answer the question about the Cowboys thing, very excited, but I have the same concerns you do. I think it's going to be Jerry Jones is going to be best man in history kind of thing.
It's just what it's got to be, right? Like the man, it's just the ultimate ego thing, and there's no way he would sign off on something that gets released that would make him look like the bad guy in any situation. So be curious to see how that all plays out.
Derek says to you, Jesse, sometime this winter, I'll pick you up, take you to a Monsters game. He says, I let you down, and he's going to fix it by teaching you the best game. Is that like Cleveland? Is it AHL or something like that?
Yeah, that's the minor league hockey team. So it sounds as if, I know a little bit of hockey. I don't know enough of it, unfortunately.
Yep. Chi-Town says he'd like a 65-66 season Bears documentary. Butkus, Sayers, Piccolo, Ditka, and Hallis mic'd up would be difficult to pull off. Now, I wonder what kind of they had some stuff mic'd up back in the day with NFL films and all that. But you could throw that Rosemary's Baby, that vintage thing that Butkus had in there, that old quote from him. But I think that would be fun as well.
I'm going to the Italian festival this Friday, so maybe I'll see Derek there. That's a big thing in Cleveland. There's 2 of them. There's one on the east side over in Little Italy. And there's one in the west side in the Gordon Square that's like walking distance that I'm gonna go to tonight and tomorrow. They have tons of like good Italian street food, and then there's like Italian street gambling games, and it's just a ton of fun, and it raises a lot of money for the local church and everything. So it's exciting times.
Mambo Italiano. That's right, baby. All right. Have fun at the Italian Fest. And you got a wedding you got to go to this weekend too, right?
Yeah. So Saturday, going to a wedding up in Michigan for a good buddy of mine that I played football with in college. And actually, it's funny because it's like, I'm friends with him, but I actually, his girlfriend and now wife to be in a couple of days, we were both math majors together. So we took every math class together. So I'm pretty close with both of them at the end of the day. And he actually transferred out like our sophomore year, but we still remain friends. And like I said, I saw him a lot because him and his girlfriend and I were often doing math homework together.
He is your token Michigan fan as well, right?
Yeah, we have he's a big Lions fan, and University of Michigan fan. Every time Michigan and Notre Dame play each other, we go to the game, and then whoever loses the game, so say Michigan loses, he buys me tickets for the next game, and then when Notre Dame wins, when Notre Dame lost, technically I'm on the hook for whenever they play again next. So just a good old friendly rivalry at the end of the day.
Good times. All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate you. Hit the like button if you would on your way out. We do appreciate that as well. Thanks to Danielle Green. If you missed the Danielle Green interview, of course, you can go back and find it either here on YouTube or on the podcast platform. We'll wrap it up, and we will talk to you Friday live at 5 with the Rapid Fire Show right here on IB Sports Talk.